As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the robe and crown, good Lord. Oh, brothers, let's go down, let's go down, come on down, come on, brothers, let's go down, down in the river to pray. As I went down to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. Oh, fathers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, fathers, let's go down, down in the river to pray. Ooh, as I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sinners, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sinners, let's go down, down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the robe and crown, good Lord, show me the way. Lord, show me the way.
Well, when they do stuff like that, then I'm like, maybe we don't need a sermon. Just let that sink in, you know? It's like, wow. Well, we're going to read out of the book of Hebrews, chapter 11. It's called the Faith Chapter. So you can read about great moments of faith out of the Bible, many of them in the Hebrew Bible, what we call the Old Testament. But today we're going to read about faith out of Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 through 3, verse 6, and then verses 8 through 12. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Indeed, by faith our ancestors received approval. By faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was made from things that are not visible. And without faith it is impossible to please God, for whoever would approach him must believe that he exists, and that he rewards those who seek him. By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to set out for a place that he was to receive as an inheritance, and he set out not knowing where he was going. By faith he stayed for a time in the land he had been promised, as in a foreign land, living in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked forward to the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith he received power of procreation, even though he was too old, and Sarah herself was barren, because he considered him faithful, who had promised. Therefore, from one person, and this one as good as dead, descendants were born, as many as the stars of heaven, and as innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. Actually, my sermon's in there. I better not put that over there. I may get an abbreviated sermon. What? You really want that? Let's see. Isn't it interesting how you can have more than one kid and how different they are? How many of you realize that? There you go. There you go. You can have more than one kid and they're vastly different. I wouldn't say Wesley and Kendra are vastly different, but they are different. Like Wesley is the quintessential musician where he kind of resists any kind of structure if at all possible. You know, he would prefer not to have any kind of a tangible schedule. If I tell Wesley, you have a day to do whatever you want, he can thrive in a situation like that, and he will find whatever things his artistic being decides to do, he will do that. My daughter, Kendra, on the other hand, she can do well that way, but she does enjoy more structure than Wes does. When we went on vacation, I don't want anything to do on vacation. I want you to give me the beach. I want you to put me very close to great food, a bed, probably a book, and don't put any other obligations on me because I don't want them. And so when we went on vacation, Kendra would start out every day, Dad, what are we doing today? Well, Kendra, just like yesterday, there's a beach out there, and there's an ocean, and here's the house, and you can do whatever you want, sweetheart. Oh, okay. And then Wes would go, Dad, when we go on vacation with you, it's a lot different than when we go on vacation with Mom. And Kendra was used to more structure for vacation. Well, we're going to do this at this time. In fact, I was going through the house and just a brilliant thing happened. A piece of trash ended up in the trash can. And I found one of Kendra's schedules. Now, I have no idea where this schedule came from. It might be from a couple years ago. Maybe this was somebody else's schedule. I don't know. But it looks like Kendra's. But it says, wake up at 7 o'clock. This is for a Wednesday. Read from 7:30 to 8. It sounds like my daughter. Food from 8 to 9. She definitely takes after her dad. She likes to eat. So from 8 to 9, we've got to make sure food. Because that waking up and then reading, it kind of wears you out. You need to start off with a good meal. So then from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, instrument. Wes, is this yours?
No, it's not.
All right. Well, the next one is PA, which I think means physical activity, maybe. And that's from 10 o'clock to 10:30. And then there's a craft from 10:30 to 11. And then science practice from 11 to 11:30. And then apparently after that it's open season. But you have a little bit of structure there for your morning. And that's Kendra's schedule. And I salvaged it from the trash because I'm like, wow, I am so impressed it got thrown away, number one. And number two, I just like, that's my daughter. She likes a little bit of structure in her life because she just enjoys that rather than ambiguity. Because when you have some tangible structure that you can see, you know what, it provides a little bit of certainty, doesn't it? There is a certain level of certainty, to be redundant, that a schedule offers that you can look down, all right, I've got this planned out for the day, and then after that I can do whatever I want. There is certainty in that, and there is some comfortable, it's a little comfortable to be certain about something. Well, what I have learned this week, and I'm sure most of you, hopefully all of you have heard, gotten a letter, whether it was in the mail or this morning, that I've been called to be the pastor at Salem Evangelical United Church of Christ in Quincy. And I have learned this week that when a pastor leaves and there's transition, that there's a little bit of uncomfortableness going on. Has anybody experienced that? Matt's leaving in a few months, that I'm a little uncomfortable with that. And you lack a little bit of certainty that happens when you know who's going to be the leader. It's written down, Matt's the pastor, and he's going to be here until the foreseeable future. There's some comfort in that certainty that I was on schedule to be here. And now that I have shared that I've been called, that God has moved me, and I'm going to be, in 3 months, I'll be moving on, but I will still love this place, and I will still love you, and I'll still be around because my kids live here. But I have noticed that it's stressful for church folk when this happens, that it's uncomfortable, and there is that desire for certainty, and you should feel good about that because it's normal to feel that way, number one. But also, when we take a look at Abraham in our scripture, he also wanted certainty. It's a normal thing to do. Here, God comes to Abraham and says, Abraham, I know that you don't have a penny to your name. I know that you don't have anything to offer me, that you live in tents and you move around like nomads, but listen, and you have no heirs of any kind, and I know that you're old and you've lived your whole life this way. But Abraham, and I know that your wife is barren and she can't have any kids, but Abraham, you're going to be my people and I'm going to be your God. And Sarah is going to have an heir, and that heir is going to be the seed of the entire Hebrew Jewish people for all of eternity. And your descendants are going to be so many and plentiful, it's going to be more than the stars in the sky and the sands of grain on the seashore. And Abraham's like, right, God. Lord, right now I have nothing, and Sarah is barren, and we're both like really old. So God, I would really appreciate some certainty about this. And Abraham, God says, not only that, but even though you have nothing right now and no property and you're nomads, I'm gonna give your descendants this amazing promised land. And Abraham again was like, right, God, can we work out a deal here where there's some kind of certainty in this? Because this is a little uncomfortable. And God said, trust me. God said, trust me. That's what he said. And so Abraham, you know what he did? If you read through Genesis, where this story originated, every step along the way, he built a place of worship. Isn't it great we have one place of worship? We don't have to build it like every Sunday. In Genesis, it's like he had to build his place of worship. Oh my goodness. I get upset when I have to redo the sound system in there. But he worshiped, he prayed, he trusted God. That's what he did in the face of uncertainty. It's a good thing to do. For Abraham, it's a good thing to do for a church like us right now. So certainty is challenging when it comes to faith, isn't it? The other thing that's challenging for us is what I call odds or probability. Now, I'm a statistics guy. I love statistics. I'm weird because I'm not good at math, but I love statistics. And I believe it's all because of baseball cards. Because growing up, I was a baseball fanatic, but I loved to read the backs of the cards. And I would study them and study them and study them. And I would go to school and I would say, well, Leon Durham never had more than 27 home runs in a season. And my friends would be like, oh, yes, he did. And I'd be like, you're wrong. Because I knew I was right. And I'd be like, all right, we just bet 20 push-ups. Do them. Oh, you can't do them? Do your best. You know, I was very compassionate, trust me. I did it in a compassionate pastoral way, even in high school. But I love statistics, and I love odds. I love odds. And recently I was excited about odds because of Serena Williams. Maybe you've heard of Serena Williams. Serena Williams is perhaps the most amazing female athlete ever. Not just in tennis, but maybe ever. That's how dominant and amazing she is. And she was, this year she was doing amazing stuff just like she always does. And she was trying to be the first female tennis player to win a Grand Slam, which I believe, I'm not a tennis person, I think that's multiple tournaments, championships in 1 year. Something like that. Since 1988 when Steffi Graf did it in 1 calendar year. Now, Serena was dominating. She was like plowing through her opponents on the tennis court as if these top tennis players in the world were not even hard for her to beat. It wasn't even close. And everybody was saying, Serena is she's on her way to just rewriting all the record books. She's going to win this Grand Slam. Nobody's going to stand in her way. She is unbeatable. And so in this particular tournament, she is so close to winning the Grand Slam that I'm pretty sure she could reach out and touch it. She could smell its smell. She could taste victory on her lips. And it tasted good. She only had a handful of matches to play. And then she came up against the Italian, Roberta Vici. Roberta Vici was not nearly the imposing physical player that Serena was. She'd been playing for a really long time, and in Serena's words, she's old. I think she was in her late 30s. She didn't really have any amazing wins on her resume. She just happened to play tennis pretty okay for a long time. She'd never won anything of that was a substantial victory ever in her life. The odds makers, and this is where the probability and the odds come in, the odds makers said Roberta Vici has a 300-to-1 chance of winning against Serena. Now, I don't know if you're a math person. Those are not good odds of winning. That means that she would have to play Serena 300 times before they predicted that she would win a match against her. Guess who won? What are the odds? 300 to 1. That's what they are. 300 to 1. Odds are a funny thing with faith. What are the odds that in the Bible that God would take a dude named Joseph, who his brothers were jealous of because his dad favored him, and they sold him into slavery, and he ended up in Egypt, a slave, and he ascended to royalty in the higher places, and you know what he did? His family came to Egypt, and they said, there's a drought, and we're going to starve to death, and he says, I will take care of you. What are the odds that a guy sold into slavery in Egypt would be able to help his family out like that? What are the odds that years later, when the Hebrew people were enslaved by the Egyptians, that they would be enslaved for 400 years, and when they escaped from Egypt, and they were running from the army, and the only thing that stood between them and safety was a place called the Red Sea. What are the odds that God would part the seas and the people would walk through to safety? What are the odds? I don't know. What are the odds that Abraham and his wife would actually have a kid? And what are the odds that that kid would have lots of other kids? And now we talk about Israel, and we talk about Jews, and we're sitting here right now. And what are the odds that God would use His own Son, Jesus, who would come here to help us find our way to God. And then He ended up being crucified and resurrected, and now we are people of resurrection with Him? What are the odds of that? It doesn't have to be just from biblical times. I mean, really, if you think about it, what are the odds that in 2011 God would say, all right, there's a Christian Church Disciples of Christ pastor across the way. I think I want him to come to St. Paul and love and care for those folks and learn lots about being a pastor and about church and following me. And I want to see them do that together. What are the odds of that? You know? And what are the odds? I mean, Haley Handyside, our very own clicker, she's going into ministry. She's going to be attending seminary this fall online to explore what ministry means for her. You know how big a deal that is for a church? That's a big deal. There are lots of churches that are much larger in numbers. They don't get this opportunity, but it's a great opportunity for us to go through this process with her. But what are the odds that this would be a place that somebody would say, you know what? I love Jesus, and I love ministry, and maybe that's what I'm supposed to go into. And maybe not just Haley, maybe some of you feel that nudge as well. I doubt it's June, because every time I say, I think God's nudging you, she says, no, Matt, that's just you. Cracks me up every time. But odds are a funny thing. And what are the odds that this church, and think about it, 1 year ago, we were thrilled, excited, overjoyed when we had Maggie here, as most of the time being our only kid, unless my kids were here, but our only young, little person. And then it almost seemed like out of heaven drops a teenage band that is amazing. What are the odds that we would go from being a church where we are thrilled to have one small child in worship to a second service with a bunch of really cool, awesome, amazing kids here right now? What are the odds? I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think those odds of that happening alone make Serena's getting beaten by Roberta Vici look like Roberta had a good shot of winning. But nonetheless, they're here this Sunday. They're here next Sunday. I think it's pretty amazing. So odds are a funny thing with faith, isn't it? Odds it's a funny thing with faith. It doesn't really do you any good to look at what the odds are, does it? I don't have
One of the odds.
a microphone anymore. What are the odds of that? I don't know. Does this work? Yes, it does.
Yes.
Do you need a microphone?
I'm good. But I love the odds. I love to be a person of faith and count the odds. It's really not the way faith works, is it? We don't really need to pay attention to the odds. We kind of just need to do what Abraham did. Or we don't look at the odds because they don't really matter. What matters is that we are praying, we are worshiping, we are opening our hearts up to God, and we're trying to find that more than we're trying to find the odds to be in our favor. Really, when we look for certainty and we look for the odds to be in our favor, you know what? That's really trying to find some element of control, isn't it? And when we don't get it, and there's lots of times we don't have certainty, and there's lots of times we don't have the odds in our favor, you know where that leaves me usually? Uncomfortable. Anybody ever feel that uncomfortableness of not having control, not having the odds? Yep. That's what it does. Well, when you start to feel this way, I have an image that Haley's going to click. I want you to think of this image. Come on, inner peace, I don't have all day. Anybody ever feel that way? I do. That's why I saw that. I'm like, oh, that is me right there. Come on, inner peace, I don't have all day. But when we feel that sense of being uncomfortable, you should know that that's normal. We're going to go through periods like that where inner peace is elusive. But what do you think we ought to be doing during those times of being uncomfortable? Freaking out is not one of them. It's just not. But I'll tell you what is something that's a good thing to do is that thing called prayer. Remember how we talked about praying? You all did so good 1 minute a day, and then we bumped it up and quadrupled it to 4 minutes a day. I'm going to tell you, this is an important time. Whether you're involved in this church a lot, if you're not involved in this church a lot, this is an important time for us to pray those 4 minutes a day. To say, God, I am uncomfortable. Lord, I have questions that don't have good answers yet. But if we'll pray 4 minutes a day from now until the end of the year, I can tell you we won't be the same church that we are today. And I love the church we are today. But if we'll pray 4 minutes a day, it'll change everything in all the right ways. Now the truth is wanting control, wanting certainty, wanting odds and probability in our favor, there is a term for that. It's called instant gratification. I love instant gratification. Anybody out there love instant gratification? I'm like an expert at wanting instant gratification. It is taking me a long time to come to the realization that faith and instant gratification don't mix very well. They don't mix very well for me, and they don't always mix very well for churches either. When word came out that, when I talked to consistory, and I've talked to people that I let them know I've got a new call, I'm going to be transitioning on in the days ahead. Well, often I hear the same thing, is, oh, we've got to hurry up and hire somebody else to replace Matt. Well, that's an expression of instant gratification right there. Because it's actually not important that you find my replacement right away. There is no need of urgency for that. What there is a need for is for us to pray and for us to seek God out for who the next person, the next leader, the next pastor might be. And that we pray that God would help us to not be in too big of a hurry so that we choose somebody other than exactly who God has in mind. And I guarantee God has someone in mind. We just don't know. But instead of giving in to the need for instant gratification, let's just remember that we're supposed to pray. We're supposed to seek God. We're supposed to trust God. And most of all, we're just supposed to be God's people. And I've discovered that if we do those things, we don't actually have a need for instant gratification. And that's a good thing for God's people. Amen.